Often than not, most nations are multi-ethnic, with varying languages that identify each ethnic group. So this is also very, very important. Every ethnic group takes pride to be identified by their own L1 or language or mother tongue, and through that, its culture is preserved. In this view, language planning process is heavily laden with fear, with pressure, with anger, with resentment, with power, and with authority. Now, this is so because every ethnic group desires the recognition of its own language, since that uplifts the ethnic group above other groups. As such, language becomes a tool of power and may be used for exploitation by those whose language has been elevated. This may also be used to undermine other people's cultures. For example, in the previous regime, when we had the late Professor Bingwa Mutharika as the state president, may his soul rest in peace, and at the time of his marriage with Kalista, there was this aspect of the Lomwe culture, kuvunukula atsikana kapena anamali, that is, lifting the pieces of cloth covering the heads and faces of the girls or the women. This is done in attempt to look for one's own fiancé. Now, when Professor Bingwa Mutharika was attempting to look for his fiancée, Kalista, had to lift these pieces of cloth on each and every girl that was available in that train, until he discovered the right face of the girl, and that was Kalista. Now, the commentary from the public broadcaster was that this is pure Malawian culture. Now, one wonders whether we have exactly what one would call pure Malawian culture, because this is otherwise a claim that results into saying Malawian culture is just one and all ethnic groups do the same things, which is not true at all. Now, is this cultural aspect universal in Malawi across ethnic groups in the country? And the ethnic groups are many. We have Sena, Lomwe, Yawo, Chewa, Tonga, Tumbuka, Ngoni, Nkonde, Lambia, and others. Is this aspect of lifting the pieces of clothes covering the heads of the girls a universal aspect of Malawian culture? Definitely no. Therefore, countries take three types of language planning. That is, 1, by directly taking on board a colonial language for both official and national language. This is referred to as exoglossic situation. So, exoglossic situation occurs where you take on board a foreign language to operate on the functions of official language on the functions of national language. If you do that, then you have taken the exoglossic approach. After all, exo means outside, which means not from within. And secondly, by taking a colonial language for official use and one local language for national communication. And this is referred to as the endo-exoglossic situation. In this case, therefore, you consider one language from outside, that is represented by the exo, and then you take the other language from within the local languages or the native languages, and this is reflected by the endo. Hence the term endo-exoglossic situation. And lastly, by taking one of the local languages for both purposes, for both functions, that is official function and also national function. Now, this is called the endoglossic situation, which means the languages are drawn from within and not outside. This is also a very, very important aspect. Now, having been given this kind of background to language planning and policies in education, now this has given us some light in terms of what is it that occurs or happens in a society when language planning activities are being focused on or are being undertaken. Now we can understand the definition of language planning better. Now we have to consider the question, what is language planning? Having this kind of background information, this kind of overview, now we can define what language planning is all about. We are going to consider 4 different functions put forward by 4 different authorities. And the first one to consider is a definition that has been put forward by Fasod. This definition has been put forward by Fasod 1990. What does he say? Fasod 1990 says that language planning is an explicit choice among alternatives. It ends there. Very short, very brief. In this, we have 2 technical terms that have to be marked with seriousness. The terms are explicit, and then the other term is alternatives. What does Fasod imply? By saying that language planning is an explicit choice, Fasod implies that explicit refers to being deliberately done, and everybody is told about it. So it is explicit because it is deliberately done and everybody is told about it, and there is nothing to hide. At the same time, by alternatives, Fasod implies that there is no one particular choice of a language in any country, be it bilingual or monolingual. This is so because of variations that exist in languages or dialects. Therefore, choice has to be there. Maybe it would be more clear if an example would be drawn locally, especially to expound on dialects. Take for example, if your choice is to use Chichewa as a national language in Malawi, the question is, which dialect are you going to pick as a standard one for the country? because the same Chichewa language is spoken or articulated differently across regions, across districts, across areas.